Hello, Gold Derbyites. Welcome back to Awards Magnet. I'm Gold Derby's deputy editor, Ethan Alter, and today we'll be featuring my interview with Scott Cooper, the writer-director behind the new film Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere, starring Jeremy Allen White as Bruce, the boss, Springsteen. The movie covers a challenging period in Springsteen's life during the making of his seminal 1982 album, Nebraska. White is a Best Actor favorite in our Oscar odds, and you'll hear how Cooper decided that the Bear star was going to be his boss. Enjoy the conversation and see the film in theaters this weekend.
This is about Bruce Springsteen. And these are the songs that he wants to work on right now.
Trying to find something real in all the noise.
You always do.
Well, let's welcome Scott Cooper, writer-director of Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere, to Awards Magnet. Thanks so much for joining us, Scott. It's great to have you.
Of course, it's a great pleasure. Thank you so much.
Congrats on the film. I got a chance to see it at the New York Film Festival, and you had the ringer of bringing Bruce himself on stage, which was an amazing moment, I think, for everyone in that room to have him out there.
Yeah, to be in Bruce's backyard in New York City and just a few blocks away from where quite a bit of the film was shot was really heartening. And then to have Bruce sing afterwards, and that reaction from from essentially a hometown audience was so thrilling and kind of exhilarating for all of us. And Bruce loved it. I think that was his 11th time seeing the movie and one of his best. So, that's always nice to have Bruce Springsteen be as engaged as he is.
And then serenading the audience. Yeah, I think the audience was hoping, and then the guitar came out. It was like, yes, he's going to sing. He's going to sing. So yeah,
that's so great. Yeah, it was really a night to remember. I mean, quite honestly, right. I didn't expect Bruce to be this involved.
Right.
I mean, he's incredibly busy.
Yeah.
But for him to have seen the movies as often as he has, traveling with us, I mean, it's a real pinch me moment, I got to say.
Right, absolutely. Imagine, yeah, because it can go either way, right? Because Bob Dylan, he tweeted in support of Timothée Chalamet and his movie, but wasn't actively out there. But Bruce has been with you all the way through, which is fun to see, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, and again, he's known to be such an incredibly exacting artist, right, and very self-critical. And as John Landau, his manager, said to me, this is the first time in 50 years that Bruce has handed the wheel over to anybody else. So it's been kind of a remarkable run, I have to say.
Right, absolutely. Well, let's rewind the clock and go back to the beginning of this. Obviously, a movie like this is a lot like a puzzle. There are a lot of pieces that have to come together to make it happen. So, at what point in the process are you a piece of the puzzle on the board? When do you get involved in this?
At the very, very beginning. Right. I was sent the novel, or not the novel, the actual nonfiction book that it's written on, Deliver Me From Nowhere by Warren Zanes, a really lovely book by Ellen Goldsmith Vane and Eric Robinson, who would end up becoming my producing partners. They didn't have the rights to the book. They didn't have the rights to Bruce Springsteen's music, or Bruce wasn't even aware that I was considering making it. But I'd heard that Bruce had seen my films in the past and really liked them. They sent me a simple email that said, "Are you a fan of Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska?" And I wrote back, "Who isn't?" It's one of the great albums of the last 50 years. And it had a lot of personal resonance for me. My father, who shaped a lot of my early musical preferences, introduced me to Bruce Springsteen through Nebraska. And I even had written a couple of other movies while listening to this record. So I felt like I could tell this story because I knew that it was incredibly narrow time frame, a very intimate time frame. I also knew that it was considered to be Bruce's most personal chapter of his life and most painful. And out of that came such an enduring work that's considered to be, one of the great masterpieces. And I said to Ellen and Eric and to Bruce, I said, this really isn't even a music film. For me, it's a psychological drama about the art of creation. It's about a neglected soul repairing himself through music, who just happens to be Bruce Springsteen. Not something that I think was expected for Bruce or for even people who've now seen the movie, because it isn't a film of spectacle. It's a very quiet and stark and hopefully, I hope a moving film for people. And I hope that it isn't what you kind of expect from this genre, which generally is a jukebox hit of songs. It's a film of, usually films of spectacle. So I hope that people continue to embrace the movie as they have since our rollout at the Telluride Film Festival to New York Film Festival and even in Lyon Lumiere Festival. It's been really a lovely experience.
You mentioned Bruce has been a fan of some of your past films, and certainly your first film is Crazy Heart, which is a great movie. Won Jeff Bridges his first Best Actor Oscar, and it feels like a great calling card for this film. Do you know in particular if that was a favorite of his?
Yes, as well as my Western Hostiles that Bruce really, I think, responded to. He told me he cried like a baby at the end of that movie, which made me feel great. I know that he really liked my second film, Out of the Furnace, which I was listening a lot to Nebraska and The Ghost of Tom Joad when I wrote that film and directed it. And in some ways, Deliver Me from Nowhere feels like a companion piece, I think, to Crazy Heart. Both films are about men on a reckoning point, artists confronting the distance between who they are and who the world thinks they are. Bad Blake, Jeff Bridges' character, and Bruce Springsteen, though very different, each faces this kind of same moment of reckoning. What do you do when the noise fades and you're alone with yourself? And I think both films live in that silence. And I think that both films are connected by honesty and stripping away the mythology to find the men underneath. And I think Bruce really was happy that that's the way that I saw the film.
I think both films are also very much films about process, the process of being a working musician. And I love movies about process. That's why I like Michael Mann movies so much. He's obsessed with process. And you really get in that too. Like, what are working musicians like? What do they do all day to create?
Yeah, and that's not generally, Ethan, inherently cinematic. Right? Because movies are about movement and rhythm and propulsion and conflict. So the task for me was, how do you make known what isn't spoken? And you hope that in some way is engaging to people. I have now spoken to some musicians of note who have seen the film and have felt that it really does give a look at the creative process in a very honest way, apart from Bruce Springsteen. So that is really quite gratifying to me. Because whether you're a songwriter, whether you're a screenwriter, whether you're a sculptor or a painter, you're alone generally in a room by yourself, and you're inventing things and you're trying to make things human, trying to make things relatable, hopefully universal. And it all happens with varying degrees of success. It just so happens that with film, you need a crew of 150 or 200 and a lot of money, as opposed to being a sculptor or a painter. So they all pose their challenges, but this was a particularly challenging film because I was, or as Paul Schrader has said, a fool's errand to try to make this movie. Because it's not only about process, it's also about, it's a love story about two men, Bruce Springsteen and his manager, John Landau. And John Landau facing the creative risks that Bruce takes, as well as trying to balance the commercial prospects, right, which we all do as filmmakers as well. And it's about a man who's trying to reconnect with his father by facing this unresolved trauma from his childhood. That's the engine, the catalyst for writing Nebraska. It's and then it's a love story in a sense in which it shows that Bruce Springsteen is unable to connect to a partner at this time in his life because he was dealing with such strong and powerful and traumatic mental health struggles. So it's trying to balance all of that in one film, and it's not for me to say whether that's works successfully, but I just hope that it in some way touches people and they can see that. My goal, I said to Bruce, was I hope people go into the film thinking it's a film about Bruce Springsteen, and they leave thinking it's a film about themselves.
Before you were a filmmaker, you were an actor. You come from an acting background. When it comes to casting, particularly, how has that helped you when you're looking for cast for your films? What do you draw?
Well, immensely, Ethan. I was an actor with an unremarkable career who, when making his first film, Crazy Heart, day one, sitting right next to the lens opposite Jeff Bridges, it's a very humbling process because you quickly realize I will never do what that man can do. You know, Jeff's one of the great screenwriters and great actors, and I knew that I would then be focused on screenwriting and directing for the rest of my career. But I adore actors, and I see a lot of movies, but I'm drawn to actors who are generally restrained. And those aren't often the type of performances that are rewarded at year's end. As the great Robert Duvall, who's a mentor of mine, and as Marlon Brando says, maybe the greatest screen actor who's ever lived, and made a career on restraint. He said to me, Scott, in Hollywood, the best acting is the most acting. And I try to do the opposite of that, Ethan. I want performances that are very lived in, very restrained, and that have a very deep internal life that aren't in any way external. And those performances tend to be quieter. They tend to be overlooked because it appears that those performances are easy because, well, they aren't doing anything. It's quite the opposite. It's like being a young filmmaker or my daughters. If I hand them a telephone or a camera, first thing they want to do is move it, as opposed to having the confidence to be restrained with the camera and allow the mise-en-scene and the actors to take the story. It's the same with acting. If you go to any acting class, right? First thing kids want to do, young actors, is emote. And they're much grander than moments that you see in life. I take a lot of my performance directions from older documentaries. Now, everybody's filming everybody, and everybody's quite performative in documentaries. But if you look at the great Harlan County, USA, that has had more influence on me than almost any film. And the performances are so searing, and so raw, and so honest. That's always my North Star.
I also think of the films of Frederick Wiseman, another one who'll just let the camera for 10 minutes at a stretch, and you just see people interacting and
Yes. And those are the type of performances that I'm drawn to. Those are the type of performances that I try to elicit from my actors, and that are lived in, restrained, but incredibly emotionally truthful.
You have Jeremy Allen White, obviously, in this film. What was the moment that you saw him as Bruce in that way, when you knew he could be as restrained as you wanted this portrait?
I'd only ever seen him in The Bear, but I knew that he had a quiet intensity, a vulnerability that I was looking for. I knew that he bore a very extremely close physical resemblance to Bruce in 81 and 82, the same kind of blue-collar physicality, the swagger, the humility. But it wasn't, so I knew he could play those quiet moments beautifully. What I didn't know, honestly, was how well he could sing. And watching him undergo the humbling process of becoming Bruce Springsteen through vocal lessons, guitar lessons, harmonica lessons, movement lessons, hours and hours and hours of video footage of Bruce. It was really quite remarkable. And it wasn't until we got to Nashville to do some pre-recording and some rehearsing that I thought, oh boy, this is going to be special. Because while he doesn't sound exactly like Bruce, it's close, Ethan. And we never were going for mimicry or imitation. We were always going for an emotional truth about Bruce, his essence, his spirit, as opposed to just cosplay, which, let's be honest, we've seen that in films. And that didn't interest me, doesn't interest Bruce Springsteen, and it's not the type of films that I respond to or want to see.
You're obviously making this film in the shadow of Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. That movie.
Oh yeah, well, and there's that, Ethan.
You always have that. You must have that in the back of your head, knowing, oh, they spoofed this in Walk Hard. How do I get around the Dewey Cox comparison?
Oh boy, do you think I've avoided that comparison, Ethan?
I think so. I think you have, yes. But I have to imagine from a filmmaking perspective, you're like, oh no, they're gonna immediately cue up that scene and put it along mine.
Yes, yeah. No, well, quite honestly, that wasn't in the forefront of my mind because I was just trying to tell a very emotionally truthful story. But now that you bring that up and raise it, and I'm quickly like thinking, oh my God, what might be parodied? But I'll leave that to others to see if I'm successful. But again, there are two people whose opinions matter most to me with this film, and that is Bruce Springsteen and John Landau. And I've seen the movie 11, 12 times, and they love the film, and that's what I take away.
I would love to hear John C. Reilly's review. So when he does see it, let's get this away.
I hope he sees it. I love John. He's an actor I've
Absolutely.
long admired and wanted to work with. I can tell you that.
The structure of the movie is interesting because in terms of pieces of music that Bruce is really well known for, you open with one of his most famous songs, "Born to Run," and then midway through, almost exactly, we get hit with "Born in the USA." So you have those two as sort of balancing acts around music that, as well received an album as Nebraska is, those aren't as those big anthems that people know so well. So tell me about using those two in that way as tent poles in a way.
Right. Well, by design, because what I wanted to do was show at the very top of the film. Bruce said to me, when he thinks about this time in his life, and he thinks much farther into when he was 7 and 8 years old, where I opened the film, he said, I only ever remember it as in black and white, which is why the cover of Nebraska is in black and white, why the liner notes in the photography of me at that era is black and white, because that's how I remember my father and my childhood. So to go from a young boy in a kind of Truffaut 400 blows way to hearing his domineering and cold and detached father coming up the steps, just terrifying for a young boy who suffered abuse. I wanted to have a hard cut to Bruce Springsteen on stage to show the audience this young boy can go from this tense moment to a moment of great euphoria. Because Bruce has said he's only ever at peace when he's performing. And he's performing a song, just as he did with a historical record, from the River album, the River Tour, actually Born to Run, but from the River Tour. And it was important to me to show Bruce Springsteen's physicality and what he gives to his audiences, but also contrast that, much like I do later with Born in the USA, with his more quiet work, more interior work, Nebraska. Now, as we see in the film, he first writes Born in the USA as an acoustic. And he says his big regret is not including that on Nebraska. But I thought it was important to show this is where Bruce is going later in his life, as he electrifies it with the E Street Band, Born in the USA. But it also shows how important Nebraska is to him. Because we know if he's putting this on the shelf, for people who are either casual fans or certainly ardent fans of Bruce Springsteen, we know that that's going to sell 30 million albums. And it's going to be one of the anthemics of all time. But it shows you the lengths that Bruce goes to eschew that and say, no, this is not what I want in my life. It's these songs, these very personal, enduring, very painful songs from Nebraska that must be released. We're putting all that on the shelf. So that's why I structured as such. One, to show Bruce at his height, and the only concert footage in the film, in Born to Run. An hour later, Born in the USA, which happened, by the way, in that exact same spot, in that very room, with Bruce standing in front of the E Street Band, arrayed as they are. As Bruce and John have said to me, it's the only time that we captured lightning in the bottle that I knew, my God, we have a monster. Whether Bruce knew that or not, which he did, he puts it on the shelf. So that's why I've structured it, because it's really about Nebraska and contrasting Nebraska with, for the casual fan, Born to Run, and then Born in the USA. And I have to be honest, I think Jeremy does a great job performing those two songs.
Yeah. And I was going to say it's a nice sort of break, too, from where you have him sort of in the room recording by himself so much of Nebraska. He's back in the studio. And again, speaking to the process, here's how you make an anthem like Born in the USA, what it looks like, contrasted with what he's doing on his own in his room.
Well, it also shows that Bruce Springsteen can be at his personal lowest, his darkest days, where he's experiencing some dark, suicidal thoughts, but also be at his creative best to write the more somber, stark, personal music from Nebraska, but also to write the anthems that would become I'm on Fire, Born in the USA, Cover Me, Dancing in the Dark. Who else can do that, Ethan?
Right. Yeah. Hard. No one comes to mind immediately. That's for sure.
No.
There's a scene in the trailer that's not in the finished film, and that's Jeremy Strong and his monologue about Bruce.
The hole in the floor. Yes, that's right.
And we know that didn't make the final cut. So obviously things don't always make it to the final cut. What was the process behind deciding to leave that out? It is in the trailer.
I'm going to tell you a little story. When Bruce was little, he had a hole in the floor of his bedroom. Me and her, the floor that's supposed to be solid, that you're supposed to be able to stand on. Bruce, he didn't have that.
Yes, well, interestingly, what I sometimes like my actors to do is, because they do great research, bring something and let's try things that might spark something I wasn't considering. Jeremy Strong brought the hole in the floor monologue to one of the scenes. I didn't think it worked in the film. Bruce is not saving the world. He can hardly save himself, Ethan, during this time. It takes John Landau, a therapist, to help him. And I appreciate Jeremy Strong's really, lovely reading of the hole in the floor monologue, but it wasn't a metaphor that I thought ultimately worked in the film. It's clear that the studio felt differently and put it in the trailer. But I've had many people come to me and say, I'm thankful that that's not in the final film. I don't know how you feel, Ethan. You must feel the same way, or you wouldn't be asking this question.
It's an interesting alternate take to wonder where that would have come. I mean, did you have a place in mind for where it would have gone? So that's the other.
I do, because Jeremy, where he performed it, and it had nothing to do with his performance. I just didn't think that it was necessary to tell the story.
Right. Yeah. It's an interesting idea for sure. I see where it comes from, and I'm glad people get the chance to hear it. But yeah, I can see the decision behind not having it in there. Maybe it's not something.
And for people who pay close attention, there are often so many things in the trailer that aren't in films.
Right.
So for people again who are expert at these sort of things, that should not be a surprise to them.
You alluded to it earlier. Faye Romano, the character played by Odessa, she's not one person, a composite of several people.
Yes.
What exactly were you hoping to get at with that particular character, and how did you what was your design in terms of creating or knowing that you were drawing on several real people?
Well, Bruce said to me, he said, "Look, I wasn't a monk during those few weeks. I was seeing a few people." He said, "But I had an inability to connect to a partner at that time, even one that I knew would be very good for me, like Faye Romano, someone that is empathetic towards Bruce, who is a great single mother, someone that I would hope the audience would want Bruce to be with." And he said, "Scott, the truth about yourself isn't always pretty. And I need you to tell the truths about me that aren't pretty. And that's one of them. I own up to those flaws. Today we would call it ghosting." He said, where all of a sudden I'm in a relationship that seems committed and I really am falling in love with that person. And then inexplicably, I would just pull back. I wouldn't take their calls. I wouldn't call them. He said they came out of the blue, much like this panic attack that he later suffers. So it seemed to me to show that until Bruce is healthy, until he faces this trauma that he's lived with since he's a child, that is he able to have a long-standing, loving relationship. And that didn't happen until he meets his current wife, Patty Sciaffa. So that's exactly what I think Faye represents. And I think Odessa plays her beautifully.
That scene together of them on the carousel in the conspiracy, it actually brought to mind the scene, the first date of Rocky and Adrian from the first Rocky, the ice skating rink date. I don't know if you go back to look at that at all, just the way they interact together. Okay. Yeah.
No, but I'm happy that you make that connection. No, that's, Bruce would often visit places that meant something to him as a child, right? He's always trying to reconnect with his childhood. And he feels very comfortable in Asbury Park. He loves spending time in that arcade and on that carousel. And I suppose if you're Bruce Springsteen and you're really becoming quite famous, and you're taking somebody out on a date, but you also want to be discreet, what do? You break into the carousel that only Bruce Springsteen can do.
That's right. He's not getting in trouble for that. So.
He's not getting in trouble.
And he doesn't have to pay off the rink owner or anything to do it. He could just show up.
No. As he says, in this town, I'm king.
Right.
And I think he still is.
It's funny, the Rocky connection then also reminded me that same year that was nominated for Best Picture, Bound for Glory, the great Hal Ashby portrait of Guthrie was also nominated. I have to imagine that's a foundational movie for you. What sort of movie? What did you take from Ashby and that movie in particular in your own mind?
Well, I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned that because I know that Jeff Bridges loved Hal, and he really gave me a very strong love of Hal Ashby's work. And I think what you're saying is kind of as an inspired connection, right? Because if you're making a film about Woody Guthrie, whom we know has really heavily influenced Bruce's life, I think both films share a quiet reverence for the ordinary. That's Bound for Glory is lyrical and dusty, and I find deeply humane. It didn't mythologize Guthrie. It just watched him move through the world. That's what I tried to do here. Bruce is doesn't want to be canonized. He wants to be understood. And like Woody Guthrie, he's trying to tell the story of people who have been forgotten. And that's what Bruce Springsteen has done for a very long time. And if you look at Bound for Glory, that's not just a biopic. I mean, in my film, it's certainly not a biopic, but a portrait of a country in pain. Seen through the eyes of a man who is afraid to look away. Bruce has been carrying that torch for a very long time, and certainly when he was making Nebraska, he is holding up a mirror to America that's losing its soul, which we certainly are today. And that's the same America, I think, that Woody Guthrie sang about decades earlier.
And to your point, both have a real focus on just ordinary people who might be extraordinary in some ways, but who at their heart are ordinary, and that's where it's
precisely. And you don't even think of it as Woody Guthrie and Bruce Springsteen. As I said at the top of this interview, this just happens to be a film about Bruce Springsteen. It's really about a man who's trying to reconcile his unresolved trauma as he's moving through the creative process, much like Woody Guthrie. They just happen to be icons. Yeah. And that's what I said to Jeremy White. I said, we're not playing the icon. We're demythologizing Bruce Springsteen. This is a regular man who just happens to be Bruce Springsteen. And having never met Hal Ashby, I have a feeling that was that's the takeaway that I get from that film.
You mentioned that Bruce has seen it about 11 or 12 times now. Yes. What do you remember about the first time he saw it? After he saw it for the first time, what was that first experience like?
Well, as you might expect, it was like when I first sent the screenplay to him and John Landau. I was anxious. You start to question your choices. You think, oh my God, is he going to like this or that? Because Bruce is known to be incredibly exacting, as I said, and very self-critical. He asked me to watch the movie with him. I, of course, declined. I didn't want to watch him watching himself. He comes out of the screening. He's deeply moved. He'd been crying. He kissed me on the cheek and really held me closely and said, Scott, it's far better than I could have ever hoped. And what a gift for me and my family. And I'm happy to say that he then shared the film with his two sisters who said the same thing to him. And his children. That's my takeaway, Ethan, is how Bruce and his family feel about the film, how much they love the film, that Bruce is continuing to see it at every turn. Wholly unexpected, but deeply, deeply moving.
I know you said you've left acting behind completely, but I do have to ask you about one. As an X-Files fan, I have to ask you about like deep cut X-Files episode, Rush. Max Hardin, Rush, back in the day. Tell me about being part of the X-Files legacy and that character in particular. Is that a job you look back on fondly?
Oh, of course, that was amazing. That show was incredible and groundbreaking, and I loved it. And I got to know David a little bit. Gillian Anderson was in my last film, The Pale Blue Eye, Christian Bale. So that's my connection back to that. But I suppose when I made that show, I thought, wow, this acting thing is going to really work out. Turns out it didn't. Turns out that I'm now a screenwriter and director, Ethan. But I look back on that time incredibly fondly.
Right. What's so funny about that role too is that was an episode about super speed. That's what Max Harden had, but it dealt with the reality of super speed and what it would do to a human body. So there's still connection to your work now. You're very focused on realism and greenness, and that character got the realistic super speed treatment. I think that's appropriate somehow.
Yeah. Thank you. And the great actor Tom Bauer, who played my father in that show, was in Crazy Heart. He was in Out of the Furnace.
Right.
We lost him last year, but he was one of the great character actors, and I always deeply love the fact that he and I shared that moment on screen.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And do you ever see yourself returning to acting one of your own movies, or
No. And believe it or not, I've been asked to do that. I've been asked by other people to be in their films, but I've gotten more offers to be in movies once I became a screenwriter and director than I ever did as a young actor. Bruce Springsteen, or rather Jeff Bridges, kept pushing me to be in Crazy Heart. To play the character that Colin Farrell ultimately ended up playing. And I said, Bruce, that'd be a major mistake. Colin's wonderful. He has all the qualities I'm looking for. No, I'm much happier, Ethan, on this side of the camera. And quite frankly, I can express myself much more than I ever could have as an actor.
Right.
And if I can have Christian Bale or Jeff Bridges or Robert Duvall or Jeremy Allen White, Stephen Graham, and many, many others, Jeremy Strong, convey what I want conveyed. I mean, I count myself as an incredibly lucky filmmaker.
Yeah. Last question. I'll let you go. The obviously Crazy Heart's the part one. This is part two. It feels like there's a third musical in your future as a trilogy. Do you have an idea of what you want it to be? Would it be another based on a real person? Would it be another Crazy Heart inspired by a real person? Do you have an idea?
There are a couple of things that I think I would love to explore. Three that come to mind. Because after the success of Crazy Heart, Hollywood wanted me to only make music-based films, right? That's what they do. And I was asked to make stories about Miles Davis, whom I love, and Chet Baker, and the Grateful Dead, and Elvis, and Jeff Buckley. I would love to make a film about the last day in the life of Elvis Presley. I would love to make a film based on Gay Talisa's great piece of journalism, Frank Sinatra Has a Cold. If you haven't read that, read it. And I've always been fascinated by the band Nirvana and their performance on MTV's Unplugged. Let's see, Ethan.
I love it. That gets my vote. I would go with that one for sure.
Good. Well, we got to get people out to see movies, man. They're staying at home.
Exactly. That's coming up on 30 years, the Nirvana anniversary. Yeah, I love it. I think that, we got to make
one of the great live performances of all time.
100%. That's great. Yeah, and we don't have the definitive Nirvana portrait yet. Gus Van Sant did a version of it, but I would love to see.
I love The Last Days. Yeah, Michael Pitt was wonderful, but that's something that I've been thinking about long and hard.
Right. All right. We're going to make this happen from here to next. You can credit Awards Magnet with making that a reality.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Scott. It was a pleasure chatting.
Yeah,
and please see Springsteen Deliver Me From Nowhere in theaters this weekend. Thanks for listening to Awards Magnet, Gold Derby podcast. Like what you heard? Leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Awards Magnet is produced by Andrew Merrill. Our logo is designed by Chelsea Sakura. Please like and subscribe to stay on top of all the awards news and email us at awardsmagnet@goldderby.com.